The world of Ixalan was an attempt at including Mesoamerican cultures into Magic. Diving deep into Ixalan with a return, we were excited to experience something new and learn something about our own world. Take for instance the names of the two new legendary merfolk from the lost caverns of Ixalan. Akbal and Nikanzil are based on the Maya words for blue night and to flourish. My name is Gerrit and our scriptwriter and editor is Alma. For this episode, Theo Pablo has graciously given us some of his time. Join us as we take a look beneath the surface of the Merfolk of Ixalan. Merfolk are Blue's characteristic race in Magic. They have a long legacy starting all the way back in Alpha with Lord of Atlantis and Merfolk of the Pearl Trident. In the Invasion block they began flirting with some off-color abilities and even one multicolor card per non-blue color. Lorwyn was the first plane to feature merfolk that don't have a hint of blue in them. White is the color of community and a school of fish feels correct. Lorwyn's counterpart Shadowmoor had two mono-black merfolk in Hollow Sage and Marrow Bone Gnawer. Next to the blue-black Ink Venoms and Gravel Gales, the three green-blue hybrid Selkies from Eventide didn't seem too out of place. A few years later, green seemed to be the merfolk's favorite secondary color on both Ravnica and Theros. The Ixalani merfolk continue this trend and embrace green even more, resulting in the first mono-green merfolk. Ixalani merfolk are between 2 and 2.5 meters tall. They can derive oxygen from breathing and filtering water through their gills. The green merfolk, however, favor the land and the trees. They generally have yellow chests, green faces and a deep purple fins that are a bit smaller than the blue merfolk have. Those are long and flowy, shaded from blue to magenta. The rest of their bodies are also mostly blue, with some magenta coloring here and there. The merfolk recognize these differences, but value these rather than have it drive a wedge between them.
A lot of what inspires both the Sun Empire and the River Heralds comes directly from the Aztec and Maya and the succession of control from one to the other. One group having been there for much longer, the River Heralds, in our case now on the tail end of their control over the continent of Ixalan.
At the time it made sense to us. The Maya civilization was there before the Aztec took over their place in history, right? Well, not quite. They were in different geographical areas with only a tiny bit of overlap. The Maya were mostly situated in the Yucatan Peninsula and the Aztec mostly in central Mexico. Not to mention that the Maya aren't gone at all, they still exist today. Despite the clumsy wording, it was clear that the intention was that the Merfolk of Ixalan had aspects inspired by historical Maya culture. This clumsiness extends further, however, to the point that some people who are supposed to get representation in Ixalan absolutely hated it. It was another story of invasion, with a lost city to be found and conquered, rather than a celebration of the depicted cultures. Returning to Ixalan, the world building and story teams have more and better resources, including native voices and experiences to draw on, as well as cultural consultants to evade the biggest faux pas. It's no wonder that the Lost Caverns of Ixalan was received much better.
We are seeing the people of the Sun Empire exploring their own world. So it's the people who are local to Ixalan exploring their own world, bringing their own perspectives. And there's a lot of things that are just look and feel very different. Aesthetically, you find like little Easter eggs, I might say, that hint at cultural things. People in Latin America have been very excited to see this set for those reasons.
That's not to say the original block was universally disliked and a new set is universally liked, of course not. But it certainly seems that the Lost Caverns is a big step in a good direction. Why were the merfolk chosen to represent the Maya? Crash Course World History had an interesting episode about the relationship between water and classic civilization. In it, John Green says the following.
Mayan art features a lot of water motifs, so much so that one scholar has described the Maya as, quote, having a fascination with aquatic iconography.
Such a sensationalized statement, a fascination, must have a proper foundation. The quote is sourced from Stephen Mithen's book Thirst, Water and Power in the Ancient World, after which he writes, the most pervasive image on the pottery vessels is what he calls the water band, a series of parallel lines in the middle of which runs a strip of dots and points. The band may either be straight or undulating, representing still and moving water respectively. This information is a rewording of Patrice Bonnevou's article Water, Droughts and Early Classic Maya Worldviews, Under the heading A Fascination for Aquatic Iconography, he says, "The importance of aquatic imagery was first emphasized by Helmut. The main iconographic component of the time was the waterband, which sometimes appeared as the only decoration on a pot. The waterband is composed of parallel lines, in the middle of which runs a strip of dots and points. Rectilinear bands may represent still waters, whereas undulating or serrated bands may symbolize moving waters." Bonnefous points at Niklaus Helmut's Monster und Menschen in der Maya-Kunst. This tome from 1987 is in German and available for as little as €50. Ordering a heavy book for a significant amount of money in a language we barely proficient in is a step too far, for now. Other sources cited by Bonnefous regarding Maya aquatic imagery are a French article, a Spanish article, and his own dissertation, also in French. Languages we only have rudimentary knowledge of. So take the whole fascination with aquatic iconography with a grain of salt. It's a catchy subtitle, not a statement of fact that has been copied without restraint. Aquatic imagery is of importance in Maya art, is much less sensationalized. The Merfolk of Ixalan have organized themselves into different bands, the leaders of which are called Shapers. There are 9 major bands and each Shaper takes on the name of one of the 9 tributaries of the Great River. There are cards for Tishana, Kopala, Kumena and Tufusa. 3 more are named on cards, Pashona, Fuhana and Fulani. The final 2, Mitika and Nothana, come from the Planeswalker's Guide and the art book. The 9 tributaries caught our attention, as in Mithen's book, Thirst, he too writes about 9 water streams. At the classic period city of Palenque in the southern lowlands of Chiapas, Mexico, water management using aqueducts, dams, channels, drains and a bridge was concerned with controlling flooding and erosion caused by 9 streams that cut through the city. The reference for these 9 streams of Palenque points at Carla Davis Salazar's article Late Classic Maya Drainage and Flood Control at Copan, Honduras, in which he cites Kirk French. His thesis, Creating Space Through Water Management at the classic Maya site of Palenque, Chiapas, Mexico, is where the 9 watercourses entered scientific literature.
Palenque is a place that, if you look into Maya culture, a lot of people will reference it because for several periods of its life it was one of the most important urban centers in America.
Around the turn of the century, Kirk French was part of the Palenque Mapping Project as an undergraduate. This project sought to, map the city of Palenque. Over the course of 3 years, nearly 1,500 structures were mapped. This is a massive improvement over the previous map, which only had 329 structures. French's duties included the recording and documentation of all water management features encountered throughout the site. In chapter 3 of his thesis, he notes that there are 56 known springs that supply 9 separate watercourses that move through the site's interior. These courses are from west to east: Diablo, Picota, Piedras Bolas, Motiepa, Bernasconi, Otulum, Murciélagos, Balunte and Ak. There are of course differences between these 9 waterways and the Merfolk's 9 tributaries. Most notably is that Palenque's waterways don't all convene into one larger stream. Perhaps it's just a coincidence and the Merfolk's 9 tributaries are instead a reference to the 9 levels of the Maya underworld. But it's a cool detail nonetheless. Let's hope for a reference to the 56 springs in the future to confirm the connection. Ixalani Merfolk used to have no permanent settlements except for the Deeproot Tree. This 120 meters tall mangrove was more a spiritual place of coming together than a city or town. Great Merfolk acted as the defenders and caretakers of this tree. Merfolk could renew their connection with nature while bathing among the roots of the tree. The Deeproot Tree could be a reinterpretation of the Maya version of the Tree of Life, Yoshche. The gods planted 4 trees, one in every cardinal direction or corner of the world. A 5th one was placed in the middle, its roots reaching deep into Xibalba, the underworld, and its branches reaching high up into the skies.
For Maya people, their connection with their natural world is very important. A lot of resistance that is currently happening amongst Maya communities in Guatemala and Mexico actually revolve around the protection of their natural world. There is this resistance and there is this sort of reverence to what these things embody. It's not just about the literal tree, but what it represents, the ancestry, the belief. And there is a sort of animistic practice in Guatemala where there's this concept of that are called nahuales, And the Nahuales are like spirits that inhabit different things. So a mountain has a Nahual, and people have Nahuales too, which can be sometimes an animal or a plant or something else. So there would be a sense of wanting to protect both individual trees and entire ecosystems.
Sadly, the third episode of the story of the lost Caverns of Ixalan mentions that the Deeproot tree is no longer alive. During the Phyrexian invasion, the Deeproot tree became overrun despite heroic defenses. Its death was felt by every Merfolk on Ixalan, who scattered as a result. Recent pilgrimages to where the Deeproot tree was situated found a polluted swamp with metal debris instead of a tree. Tishana summoned all Merfolk who could hear her to a great congress to discuss their future. The most visible influence of the Maya on Ixalani Merfolk is the use of jade. While the Maya were not the only ones to have jade on the continent, see these Olmec masks, some of the most well-known Mesoamerican jade objects are Maya funeral masks, like the mask of Pakal of Palenque and this mask from Tikal. It's no accident that the only Merfolk spirit in the set wears a jade mask.
And you can see that he's coming out of a grave, and in that art there are a couple of things that I really love. One is that pattern that you see along the edge of the door is really reminiscent of a snake pattern that was used by the Maya. The Maya have this figure that's a serpent with two heads, and it coils around like that. And then the jade mask, a lot of important people were buried in their funerals with jade masks like that.
The word jade is used for two different types of stone. Nephrite is composed of calcium and magnesium and is just slightly softer than jadeite, which is composed of sodium and aluminium. Both are very hard stones, between 6 and 7 on the Mohs scale, a scale that is used to measure mineral hardness or scratch resistance. For comparison, diamond sits at a 10 and graphite at a 0.5. This toughness gave jade a lot of value to the Maya. They noticed that everything was degrading over time, but objects made from jade remained the same. The stone became a symbol of power and authority, of eternal life, love, protection, and good luck.
Jade was used everywhere by wealthy people in Mesoamerica. You would see things like, you know how people, like now, people do it in modern times too, where they expand their ears and put a disc in there? They would do the same thing with jade discs. They would also pierce their noses with jade and their ears. They would give themselves little jade ornaments on their teeth. And they would wear necklaces, headdresses, and jade was a very, very valuable thing to have.
Jade Bearer informs us that for Merfolk 2, jade items outlast mortal life, so they are passed down to new generations, including their history. The Merfolk of Ixalan use the toughness of jade in armor and weapons as well. Sworn Guardian has a jade shield, knife, and body armor. Jade Guardian actively uses his jade to block incoming arrows. River Herald Guide and Jade Light Spelunker use jade to amplify light in order to see more. Jade Light Spelunker's Boya Box version holds a Makwa Weetle and wears a jade godpiece. He's a visual reference to Tucunuman, a Guatemalan national hero. He was leading the Quiche people in resisting and fighting the Spanish invasion. Tales tell of a fight between him and Pedro Alvaro at the Battle of El Pinar.
Tecunuman confronted Pedro Alvarado in single combat, and he was able to kill the horse, but then Pedro Alvarado speared him, and Tecunuman, as he lay dying, the Quetzal bird, which I think you might be familiar with, well, the Quetzal was Tecunuman's Nahual. And so as he lay dying, the Quetzal came and lay on his chest. And this is why the chest of the Quetzal is red, like blood.
Topography Tracker and Storm Sculptor have multiple smaller stones swirling around, apparently channeling their magic, while Merfolk Sovereign has them hovering in place. Jade stones are also used to summon elemental creatures, as visible in Air Elemental, Jungle Creeper and Wildgrowth Walker. Sometimes jade stones are components for Guardian Golem, see Gilded Sentinel and Awakened Amalgam, as well as jade seed stones which are crafted into Jade Heart Attendant. The Merfolk in Herald's Reveille uses an ocarina, which looks very much like a contemporary made one. No, they don't all look like the one from Zelda. Finally, Deeproot Historian uses a jade mask to hide her presumably blind eyes. She reads by touch.
I think that there's an important piece here in this card, because she's talking about how there's this other group where the language closely resembles their modern language, and so there's an interesting thing that, like, ancient Maya language was its own thing, and now there's about 30 Maya languages spoken today that are all derived from ancient Maya ones. But you can see how related they are, and you can also see the relation to ancient Maya. So even though these are all very separate cultures, because I think that a very common mistake that people make is thinking about Maya people as all being the same, but they were not. You know, it's like even ones that lived in close proximity were not exactly the same. And this is true of modern Maya as well. So there's this sort of thing of a shared identity and shared ancestry, but also uniqueness. And I think that there's a very important thing to keep in mind there.
The Merfolk are not the only ones that reference the Maya. There are stela, murals, and the Millennium Calendar. And while it's a big component, not everything is only built on and with Maya references.
I don't want everything to overlay each other. That's a retelling of history. We're doing a fantasy set. We want to stimulate people's imaginations. We want to inspire people to make new things. We want folks to see this and want to go seek where we were inspired, right? Like we drew from a very deep and colorful well. We want people who see the set to do the same. Go look for that well, you know, and show us what you can do with it.
It's time to wave goodbye. Another heartfelt thanks to Tio Pablo for making time for us. He has some very interesting videos on his channel, including a 40-minute background video for Ixalan, a 2-hour deep dive with Jessica Sagahorn, and an hour-long interview with the Lost Caverns of Ixalan art director Ovidio Cartagena. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, let us know your favorite merfolk from Ixalan, and subscribe to see more from us in the future. Thank you for watching, and hope to see you next time.